What is up, my Lorcana Goons? Welcome back to the Lorcana Goons channel. My name is Kevin, and you are watching the Quest with a Guest podcast hosted by Zach Stone and myself. Today's guest is going to be none other than Baker, aka Lorcana Villain. Lorcana Villain is a fellow Lorcana content creator. He has a passion for acting, TCGs, and all things Disney. On this episode, we're going to break down his history playing card games and even break down the current meta of the game in a tier list to help you prepare for any big tournaments you may have coming up, like the DLC or the set championships happening every weekend in July. So sit back, relax, and stay tuned to Lorcana Goons. What is up, Lorcana Goons? We are here on the Quest with a Guest podcast with none other than Lorcana Villain, aka Baker, my goon. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much for having me, my Lorcana Goons. I've been a big fan of the channel for a long time. I feel like we came around at sort of the same sort of time. And we've kind of been neck and neck almost the entire journey, but it's always been great to see. I've always fully supported you. I love your content, and I'm glad we were finally able to make this happen.
Yeah, man, it's kind of hard because Zach and I are from Los Angeles, and you're all the way in the other side of the world. So our time difference does make it kind of crazy. But thanks, man. Thank you so much for saying that. I felt the same way. I feel like we started the YouTube channels around the same time, and you were for sure my point of reference of like, okay, I got to keep up with this guy. I got to keep up with our kind of villain. It's inspiring, you know. And I think since we're both competitive players too in the game, like to the extent, we look at that and we look at that competition.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
You've got to get your metrics from somewhere, like, and that's perfectly healthy as far as I'm concerned. But no, to give you your credit, I think most of the journey you've been 1 to 200 subs ahead of me. So I've always been like chasing the rabbit, or chasing the goon,
chasing the goon.
In this instance, chasing the goon.
But Baker is a huge supporter of the channel, always has been. True Lorcana Goons himself. Goons need their villains and vice versa. So thanks for being on here, man. We're going to talk about the DLC. We're going to talk about how to prepare for big tournaments. Because if you guys didn't know, Lorcana Villain is also a competitive player doing well in the Lorcana scene, but also well in the past in Yu-Gi-Oh! You know, so he has a lot of big tournament experience. He's been covering the Disney Lorcana challenges in person on stream. So he's been there and he can tell you all the decks that you can expect there, and he covers deck lists on a regular basis. So if you don't know his channel, go like, go comment, go subscribe to Lorcana Villain, one of the best channels in the Lorcana space for sure. And you know, you'll see him at all the DLCs streaming the casting pretty much nowadays. So he knows a lot about the meta. So we want to pick his brain and get on into what you should do to prepare for your set championships, for your Disney Lorcana challenges, even your big local tournaments, etc., etc. But yeah, man. So overall, how do you feel about the meta this month, guys? Like, do you feel like Bucky is reigning supreme? Do you feel like you can play anything right now? My personal take is that we are underestimating the ability of other decks to play around Bucky. I feel like I learned that a lot this weekend in my set championships. What do you guys think?
First and foremost, definitely, I got to play in the set championships this past weekend. I took down an Ursula with a second place mat, so it was interesting little 6-round tournament. Now I know that these set championships aren't like a huge like challenge event. They have smaller rounds, so we actually had 33 people, which is just the amount of threshold needed for 6 rounds. And I went off and started 4-0 and had intentionally drew my last 2. Ended first after Swiss, so I had home court advantage is what I like to call it, and I got to always start. And in the finals, I lost to a Amethyst Steel like mid-range deck. They definitely played more like Robin Hoods and Tinkerbells, but very aggressive low to the ground strategy still. And it got me in game 3. I was at 18 lore and I couldn't finish it off. So
what were you playing?
I played Ruby Am, good old reliable, and it's a deck that I had a little bit of practice with and prepared during Rise of Floodborn format. I went on to play Amber Steel during set 3, and that's what I played at the challenge and all throughout my set 3 championships. And then with set 4 coming out, Amber Steel kind of got kicked out of the format, at least the Steel Song variants of Amber Steel. So I was just kind of testing out Emerald Steel since that was my first color combo from set 1. And even though it's good, it's powerful, I just didn't like the deck into like how many people were like so prepared for it. And it pretty much felt like you were always having to like answer, or you were always being answered to, and sometimes you would just lose because they didn't have the answers. and same kind of rules apply when you just didn't draw Bucky. It felt like an uphill battle. It felt like a really like bad mid range deck when you didn't find Bucky. So I told myself, well, I have a lot of practice with Ruby Am. I have a lot of good players of Ruby Am players in my circle, like Kevin. So I took that as more of like an advantage. So yeah, definitely had to really tone down the deck list, but it's pretty standard to what Lucas Serrano won the 10K with. But yeah, how about you, Baker?
Yeah, so to answer, like in terms of like how I feel about the meta in general, I think it's still pretty good considering. If you think back through our limited formats we've had, with Chapter 1 basically being Ruby Amethyst, Steel Song, 1-on-1, Rise of the Floodborn being completely dominated by Ruby Amethyst, and then Set 3 into the Inklands, I think a lot of players looking back on very fondly as a fantastic meta where so many decks got the chance to shine. We had and you could play a tempo. There were so many decks that were viable, and I think Set 3 format was fantastic. Set 4 format I don't think is a lot worse than Set 3. I think it's just really been tainted by Bucky. I think Bucky just left a lot of really sour tastes in people's mouths, and that made it like in previous set, if you lost to discard, yeah, like a lot of players, I'm one of these players that just doesn't like playing against discard, but it's a part of TCGs. It was part of TCGs back in my Yu-Gi-Oh days. It's just something you kind of have to deal with, and you could deal with how Emerald Steel looked in the past. But Bucky just made it feel like it was a matter of you hit it or you lose. And I just think Bucky left such a sour taste in people's mouths, the combination along with Diablo. And yeah, I'm not mad to see it changing. However, I do agree with you in principle that a lot of people underestimate other decks' ability to play around Bucky. I do think it was manageable. I just think it was just leaving so many people with such sour taste in their mouth for like feeling like they had no control over how the game went, as opposed to like, again, it's always going to feel sour to lose, but it's one thing to say like, oh, I tried my best, or like I tried these lines and it just didn't work out, or I flipped a coin on gambled on a line and it just didn't work out. But if you just don't feel like you get the chance to play the game, that's souring. But I do agree, like I did a lot of practice going into set championships. I've only done one. I did the media one at the beginning of before they actually officially started, and I wanted to get to some more public ones, but I had casting in Germany, and then I got really ill off the back of that. And I'm hoping I'll get to do one before the end of that public one, before the end of the month. But even this media one was like a lot more competition than the first one. Like I played Earlmeister, Alphos, Spessy, Cower was there, Howling Mines was there. Like there were some really good players at this event. So it might have been a smaller field than some people are used to, but it was no slouch when it came to actual players. So I put in a lot of play testing. Again, similar to you, I'm lucky enough to have a group that I can play test with. And I knew that as a Ruby Amethyst player that Bucky was the match I was fearing the most. So I just played a lot into it to prep for set championships and just worked out the lines and like just learned the matchup really. So yeah, I've enjoyed the format. I haven't had as much chance to play this format as I did into the Inklands format, just because personal things, time just hasn't worked out that way. But obviously, my finger's right on the pulse of everything. I'm looking at all the deck lists. I was casting for Germany. I watched all of Chicago. So yeah, my finger's still on the pulse of the game, and it still feels like we have a pretty good meta. Like all in all.
Nice. And you won an Ursula too, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes, I came second. Yeah, it was... How many rounds did we do? We did 4 rounds. Yeah, so I beat Earlmeister round 1, who was also on Ruby Amethyst. 2-1'd him for 3 very close games. Then I played Alphos, who's on Sapphire Steel, and Alphos is a very, very good player, but he was on the version without a Whole New World. And if I know that you're not playing Whole New World as a Ruby Amethyst player and that I'm free to just play rabbits and cycle, then that's half the game won for me already, as far as I'm concerned. Plus, he wasn't playing many of these small things like hooks or scuttles or things to protect against Be King Undisputed and Tremaine. I was able to just always have you played Flavisham, here's the Brawl. You played Ariel, here's the Bee King. You played Tamatoa, here's the Tremaine. Because he wasn't able to extend enough against me, and I was just free to draw as many cards as I wanted to. So that matchup could have been a lot worse for me, but as it went, it was okay. Then I played a Bucky in round 3, which I ended up putting this up as content because I filmed the game. Round 1, game 1, should I say? He didn't hit Bucky at all. And it's exactly like you said a minute ago. Like, when you don't hit Bucky, Emerald Steel feels like the worst mid-range deck in the world. It just does nothing. Absolutely nothing. It does live and die by this squirrel. So yeah, game 1, he didn't hit it at all. So I just absolutely annihilated. Game 2, he hit 3. Like, turn 2 Bucky, turn 2 Bucky, turn 3, shift Diablo onto the 1-drop, and then turn 3 do the side. Like, he was able to just get me discarding 3 at a time, and I'm like, what do you do against that? Like, the Ruby Amethyst strategy against Bucky is just don't play anything unless it draws you a card, or unless you're brawling the Diablo, that's also fine. But other than that, you just play really slow. But if they're making you discard a card a turn, then 2 cards a turn, then 3 cards a turn, there's just nothing you can do about it. And then game 3, it was even Steven. He hit 1 Bucky, which is reasonable, and I was able to get the turn 7, be prepared, stabilize better because Ruby Amethyst just has better draw. And the thing is, Emerald Steel Bucky, like, you can let them get to 17 and it's still not over because they have no reach. Like, a couple of them have started playing Cricky just so you have that character with a bit more of a more aggressive quest turn. But other than that, everything in that deck basically quests for 1. So if you can stabilize, like, even if they're sitting at 16, 17, you can still just win the game, which is why I think the people that are playing Bucky for the remainder of the format that we have Bucky, play a couple of Curse Merfolk, because I'm telling you, I always lose by 4. I always win by 4. If they'd have had just that extra bit of pressure, then I think that really makes the Ruby Amethyst matchup a lot harder, even though it's already a good matchup. But like you say, players learn how to play around it. So, yeah, that's my thoughts.
Yeah, man. If not a Merfolk, I also like Prince John because it does kind of add that extra extra impact from the Discord. And Prince John quest for 2, he got awards, so he's not going to get outed by anything other than B prep. But
you're right.
Yeah, but just like food for thought on that, you know. But the reason I do ask about like the meta and you guys' opinions is because when prepping for big tournaments, you said something very important, Baker. You needed to learn your matchups. You know how to play Ruby Amethyst, right? But as formats change, you need to adapt to your matchups. You mentioned how Alphos was playing the list without Whole New World in his Sapphire Steel deck, right? You as a content creator who constantly covers tournaments, when you see that, you're able to catch on like, oh, I see a Mickey Mouse on turn 3, right? And you start realizing he's not playing Whole New World. I'm going to start playing my rabbits. You know, I'm going to punish you for that. And knowing that, taking advantage of that, I think is a very important part of playing these big tournaments, because you're going to be playing, whether it's 4 rounds in a media tournament, 6 rounds at your set champs, or 9 rounds at the DLC. You have to be prepared for the variance. You have to be prepared for different types of deck lists you're going to see, you know, so be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to Lorcana Goons and Lorcana Villain if you're watching this, because you can't keep up with all of the deck lists. But I really, really take notes and start focusing on like little nuanced differences on like how the deck lists are running, you know, because when I see certain cards like Mickey Mouse instead of Fishbone Quill on turn 3, it tells me that I can take advantage of that, you know. Or same thing when you're playing against these Ruby Amethyst lists and you know that they want to curve into Chernabog, Flynn, Sisu, you know, make sure you keep your Brawl in your hand if you have a card like that, because you want to have outs to those cards because you know what their strategy is. Lorcana's in a space right now, especially without Pixelborn, where I feel like the meta is like changing very slowly, you know, and people aren't taking a lot of risks right now. It's very easy to see a deck list online, copy it, and say, I'm going to play this list because this list looks like it's doing well, and I don't have a way to practice other cards that I don't have in real life. And it does kind of create a little bit of a lazy format in my opinion, but you can take advantage of that. I've been looking at so many set championship deck lists, and there's so many different little nuances with like a lot of these like different color combinations now. Like, people aren't really playing like Ruby Amber with Mufasa anymore. There's that Jim Hawkins location deck that's running around. I've been seeing Jafar get taken advantage of in Emerald Amber. Emerald Amethyst. You know, I've been seeing that Alpha Bro guy. He's just so many people playing Jafar Wheel again. But I'm trying to keep up with this stuff because when I go to the DLC, I don't want to get caught by surprise. I don't want to get caught with my pants down, as Zach likes to say. And then my last experience, I had to play Josh Bolt in top 16, and he was playing Amethyst Amber, and that deck was just not in my radar. And I can like now that I think back at all the plays, I'm pretty sure game one wasn't like in my favor. But regardless, I probably could have done different plays. Game one, maybe would have won that game one, and game two, I could have mulliganed way differently. Maybe not get 2-0'd in that top 16. And like I think part of that is what I want to take away and like leave some of the viewers with is like know your matchups for sure. Practice. Don't be afraid to watch videos. Don't be afraid to reach out to certain players. Buy articles is what I've been seeing a lot of people do as well. Team Labyrinth has been updating their Discord with player articles on like what how to play certain decks, and I've just been reading them too. I don't even play Sapphire Steel. I don't even play some of these decks.
Soak it up though.
Yeah,
soak it all up though. Like even if you're like me and you have a pet deck and that's pretty much all you're going to want to play, you should still be working out how all the other decks work, because then you're going to know how to play against it. So yeah, soak it all up 100%. And to your point, like I will always have the edge over someone that doesn't know the card pool as well as me, because I can see X amount of cards in your deck, and I probably know you're 60. And the best players can say the exact same thing, whether it's because they're content creators themselves or they're watching all these content creators, they're watching these deck guides and breakdowns. And if people have got different opinions, all the better. Soak it all up, see what you agree with, and even what you don't agree with, think, okay, well, I don't agree with that, but if that's how some people are thinking, maybe that affects how I play against someone. If I run into someone that has that trail of thought of how a deck should play out. Because this is it, like, pro players will make a move assuming that you are going to make the correct move, right? So what happens when the opponent does something that isn't technically correct? Does that throw off your game plan? Oh, well, I've just inked the thing that I shouldn't need because you really shouldn't have done that. But you've actually just won the game by doing it because maybe I put too much respect on the name, or maybe it was a reverse psychology thing. And there's a lot of nuances to card games that I'm a big, big fan of.
Yeah, Zach, I wanted to actually ask you. You had a moment this weekend when you were playing against one of our friends, Ian Santos, and I didn't see the actual match, but after the game finished, you kind of were like, "Hey, did me moving this character here impact your decision making?" And it was one of those scenarios where you did exactly what Baker's talking about. You knew what your opponent was like playing. You knew what his correct play more than likely was, and you kind of quote unquote correct play, right? And you kind of took advantage of it. You moved characters. Can you explain it actually?
Yeah. So before I explain the situation, something I kind of want to add on to what Baker was talking about, and I've felt like this since I've been playing Yu-Gi-Oh for a very long time. I've always felt like this. You have your novice, intermediate, and expert players. Your novice players lose to your intermediate players. Your intermediate players lose to your expert players. And every once in a while, your expert players lose to the novice players because of what he just explained about how you're not anticipating the right play. And it happens all the time. It literally happens. We've Kevin and I have talked about it. We're like, he did this on this turn, and I shouldn't have an answer, but like, why would you do that? You know what I mean? But and what Kevin was talking about in my situation is that this was against Emerald Steel game 1. Now, it was a very grindy game. It was probably like turn 10, 11, 12. But we got to a point in the game state where he had an Ursula Deceiver and a Diablo. And I had Medusa. I had a Medusa, a snake, and another character. And I had a castle on board. And I decided, because I think I just played the Medusa that turn, and I had one card in hand, and it was a fox. So, and I had 9 ink, so I knew I could play Fox and Medusa the following turn. And so part of me was thinking that he has an Ursula, he can sing a song twice. If he sings like a song that removes characters, because like some of my characters had damage on it previously, that's for a fact. And so I was really thinking about it, and I was like, well, I need this Medusa. I need it so bad that I'm willing to just move a character that I think it was a snake and another exerted character. I moved those to the castle because I just played the Medusa's ink was not yet dry. So I had thought in my head, oh, he's going to kill the characters on the castle. And he's either going to do that or he's not. But he has a Diablo that's going to be exerted the following turn because he had Ursula and Diablo. So he was either going to decide if he wanted to draw more cards or prevent me from drawing cards at all, period. And what he ended up doing is he sung Strength, killed the characters on the castle, left the Medusa by herself, and he quested with Diablo, passed. I drew, I quested, played Fox, played Medusa, and I even it's funny too, after he did something that you shouldn't do is you should always make decisions. You should always like play cards that let you get information or let you see more information rather than make a decision beforehand. And he did use strength, but then played his Ursula Deceiver to see my hand was a fox. So he could have telegraphed my next line of play, but decided on playing one card before the other. And again, I even asked him, just did I make you kill the castle characters because I didn't move Medusa here? And he's like, yeah, I actually. And now that I think about it, man, you got me. So it's about just kind of understanding what your opponent's like mentality and getting inside their head. It's always something I always preach. Try to think about what your opponent's thinking about and think around that.
It's kind of like because you're telling yourself like, oh, his correct play is remove the characters from the castle because you don't want them to draw, right? You know, but you kind of also mentioned he could have seen your hand and they predicted your line of play. But yeah, doing that, like knowing the correct plays and then kind of manipulating that to your advantage also helps a lot. Because if you are assuming, well, my opponent is probably going to play Brawl on this turn, why don't I play around that? So that he thinks I don't have the play, you know, and then it becomes this whole like mental, like you said, Baker, this reverse psychology stuff. But yeah, so much nuance to this game, man. I do think that like practice is a big part of preparing for a lot of these tournaments. Like, you know, don't take practice for granted. Definitely try and hit up your LGS, try and get some remote duels on. They got the Real Play Network. Pixelborn just started doing its thing again too, so you can play remote duels like that. Other than that, do you guys have any other tips on how to navigate yourself through big tournaments, maybe for first timers as well?
As I've been quite transparent about for Lorcana specifically, I don't get the chance to go out to all that many events. But back in my Yu-Gi-Oh days, similar to you, fine gentlemen, it was a very different story. I was traveling every single weekend. I was taking it as seriously as you could possibly take it. From like, I'd say. I was playing since I was like 10, but like traveling for tournaments and stuff from like 13 to 19, 20. So a good 6-7 years I was taking it really seriously, every weekend traveling somewhere different. The one and only time I ever went to America is I played SJC California, which was a lot of fun.
It's in Long Beach, right?
So,
Long Beach, right?
Yeah. Although I don't remember much of it because I got terribly sick. Basically, long story short, me and the team that I was part of, there was 4 of us. The idea was to fly out there, get there on the Wednesday, and we were going to spend Wednesday evening, Thursday and Friday seeing a bit of California, and then play the tournament Saturday, Sunday, fly home on Monday. We got there on the Wednesday. I got sick as you like. Like for the rest of the week, I got just good enough to wake up on Saturday morning, go and play Yu-Gi-Oh all weekend, and then fly home. So I regret that I didn't get to see as much as I want to. But hopefully during my Lorcana career will take me back there. But yeah, I was very much in the thick of it. And yeah, I think a lot of it is transferable. Again, everything we were just saying about knowing the card pool, knowing the decks, knowing the meta, like that is so much, like that is so important, just because not only knowing your deck, but you want to be able to sit down against anyone and within 2 or 3 cards know what they're playing so that you can prepare against it. Like that's so basic, but it's just one of the most important things that I'll always say to any beginner is you'll never be as good as you can be until you learn all the cards and you get to a point where you can sit there going, okay, they're at 3 ink. They could play this, and that you need to know what all the options are, and that will help you take your own turns better. So if you're a beginner, then learning the card pool and the decks, I think, is one of the most important things. But even if you are more experienced, just refreshing, like preferably, like you say, you're someone that gets a lot of chance to play test, whether that's at your LGS or you've got a friend group that gets together or online for courtesy of like you say, there's webcam games or there's things like Tabletop Simulator that I've used in the past as well, when needs must. So yeah, if you're doing a lot of practicing, then great. But if you know that you're maybe not as fresh, maybe last time you played was a month ago, it's important to like refresh yourself of these things, like again watching content, play if you can. So yeah, just preparation, and yeah, like there are things you can do to take it even further, because obviously being at a tournament, especially like 9-round days, you need a lot of stamina. It's tiring, right? Like you get hungry, you get tired, you get stressed, and we're all playing for like a game that we really care about and has big prizes and big money attached to it, and a lot of pride for people as well. So your emotions are going to be on high, which is totally understandable. But I think it's important to do everything you can to make sure that your presence is not oppressing to anyone else. Okay, it's not your round 7th opponent's fault that you haven't got enough points to make top cut. All right, if you're still playing the game, you go and you play the game. All right, don't bring your crap into like that person. It may be their first tournament. They may be just happy seeing how far they get. Maybe they've come with family, so don't bring that into them. You take that home and deal with that however you want to in private. Whatever it is you got to do to because it's okay to be annoyed. I've come home and been furious at myself for things that I've done. You are absolutely valid to have these feelings. But keep it to yourself or to your circle, to your loved ones that you know can be that and are going to still. Everything's going to be cool when you finished, and you take your aggression out on each other and you slap each other on the back and you get on with it. But don't bring that crap to strangers. So look after your own mental health for other people's sake as well. Keep hydrated. Again, it takes a lot of stamina to get through a day like that. I know people that in the build up to big events are like going out for the morning jog, making sure that they're getting their 10 plus hours sleep, whatever it is you got to do, because it's not really a one size fits all sort of answer. Everyone has different things that they need to do to feel the most prepared and capable of going into an event like this and hopefully taking it down. But at the very least, playing your best, being a good sportsman, and like being a positive energy in that room. So yeah, prep whatever way you feel that you need to, whether that's extra snacks in your bag, extra sleep. Maybe you need to be hitting the gym a few days a week before the event if you need to build up that stamina, whatever. Yeah, to build up that mental as well. Whatever it is that you've got to do, but on the most basic one size fits all level, know the cards, know what they do, know your matchups. Don't walk into a tournament saying, okay, if I'm against this round 1, these are the cards I need to mulligan for. Against this is what I need to mulligan for. And then just do the best you can. And that's it. That's all you can do.
Yeah, even taking it back to old school, high school and college studying days, get some flashcards, guys. Give yourself that extra preparation. And you don't need physical cards. We have technology that can help us out too. But just do whatever it takes. Something that I kind of wanted to touch up on is earlier in his point, knowing what your opponent is playing when they play the first 2 or 3 cards. I always find it very strange or kind of interesting when by turn 3, my opponent's inked and played only mono colors, especially when it's like amethyst, right? Or, or steel, because then you're just like, what is their other color? And it's hard to adapt and adjust when you only have so much information. But that is the beauty of Lorcana, is that there's so many different like combinations and so many things that are unexplored. So just kind of always remember too that like this game is still evolving, this game is still fresh, and even though there's like confirmed strategies and ideas that have proven results, because numbers don't lie, that is doesn't mean you can't do well with something else.
For sure.
Another big point that I wanted to also say too is that and anything that you guys have like ritualistic based for any like preparation for something, stick to your rituals. If you get up and let's say you brush your teeth and then you do you do something else, like let's just say you have a strategy of how you get ready in the morning, stick to that same routine, that same strategy, because your brain understands patterns, and you can throw off you can throw something off if you just do something different than you normally used to. Also, another big, staying hydrated, staying well rested. Also, the night before your main events or your day 2, don't take a risk and eat something that's not the most like healthy. I would say, make sure you stick within your diet, you stick within that kind of don't treat your stomach bad, because you don't want to feel uncomfortable throughout the tournament. Just keep in mind that you're in a venue for hours and you're going to be constantly having to wait in lines to get to other places, get to access to things, and sometimes you can't even take that long of a time frame outside of just your games that you have to play. So just keep in mind that everything kind of matters. Everything's important. If you guys are expecting to go to your first Lorcana challenge this weekend, or if you have, Toronto in next month, just kind of understand that like everything that we're talking about is stuff that we have been doing for a long time. Kevin and I have been playing card games for years. I've been traveling for over 10 years. And really quick, actually. So when were you playing Yu-Gi-Oh? I like to always kind of like think about what formats you've had to play, Baker. Would you share with us how long you were playing Yu-Gi-Oh for?
Yeah, so I played right from the beginning, since before there was a ban list, up until I want to say not long before Synchros. Yeah, not long before Synchros. So like all the original formats like Goat Control, the likes of Yatta, BLS, Chaos, through to X-Sabers, Gladiator Beasts, Crystal Beasts, Light Swans, Destiny Hero. So my best form, like the best I ever was at the game, was Perfect Circle Monarchs. So like Destiny Hero, Disc Commander, Fearmonger, Stratos. When you could only play one Stratos, that list was, and then you played Monarchs like Riser, Caius, things like that. So yeah, that was kind of my era. I've got something cool that you might appreciate. My first ever tournament that I ever went to. You remember they used to give away the tournament packs?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it's a mechanical chaser, bro. That's crazy. Oh, no way, dude. Oh, wow.
It was always killing anything that was level 4 or lower.
It was a big deal. I never played with it either, though, even though you are right, like it was the holy grail, just those extra 50 attack. But thankfully, when I pulled it, let's put it this way, when I pulled it, I had a group around me who, thankfully, because I was young, I was like 12. I had a group that informed me of just how rare this was and big a deal it was for me to have got this, so I just kept it safe.
Nice.
But yeah, like I've got Light and Darkness dragons in here, Fiber Jars, Injection Fairy Lilies,
oh, heck yeah,
Cyber
dude.
Dragons.
Cool.
Like the proper old school stuff.
Oh,
Imperial...
that's a super rare dust shoot, Kevin. That's like a $300 card.
Oh no, yeah, no, dude. This is like class. Oh,
Delinquent Duo. That's
super rare.
People don't understand.
I love the champion pack stuff. I know how much value, like anything first
BLS,
edition in that
super
page
BLSs.
too.
The enemy
Oh man,
well.
that is so cool.
Those ulti ones. Wow.
That's my era of Yu-Gi-Oh, and yeah, I've got really fond memories. I think it was a fantastic game back in the day. I hate it now. I'm sorry.
No,
I'm watching.
I agree.
But,
I agree with you. I'm on the same boat, buddy.
Hate it. But old school Yu-Gi-Oh was something else. It was so good, and I'll always have such fond memories of the anime. And not just the anime. Did you ever watch Yu-Gi-Oh! The Abridged series?
Oh yeah, dude. I grew up. That just hit its 18 years. It just hit its 18-year anniversary this week, right?
Yeah, bro.
Dude.
So that show, like on many different levels of my life, has been so important. Like, obviously, just because it was hilarious when you would like to be a young Yu-Gi-Oh! Fan. But I remember I was 26, so 27, something like that, and like. I was in one of the lowest periods of my entire life where like nothing feels fun. You don't enjoy any of the things that normally bring you joy. Like just feels like you're just stuck in a hole and like you haven't laughed in God knows how long. And I remember one evening where I was just flicking through and I found old school Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged. And I was like, oh, this was funny when I was younger. And at this point there were like a new 30 episodes from the last 10 years. And I sat there and I binged it all and I laughed for the first time in what felt like years, and just for hours, like just sat here just absolutely balled over laughing at this show, and it pulled me out of a rut. So yeah, I'm very fond of it. So yeah, got very fond memories of Yu-Gi-Oh! And yeah, as you say, it was pretty competitive. I remember I met some wonderful people through Yu-Gi-Oh! Some great friends, some wonderful people. But it was pretty toxic back then as well.
Yeah, it's a that scene is something else. It's very cutthroat. It's very cutthroat for the pricing. I do want to shout out Mechanical Chaser. That is like the first power creep that Yu-Gi-Oh experienced. I've been trying to think of like a way to compare it to Lorcana, but like it's like when I don't even know what's like. Oh, it's like when Flavor Sham came out, right? It's like you stop playing Beast Mirror and Sapphire Steel because you can play Flavor Sham now. That's how even though that little 50 attack, that Mechanical Chaser power creep, but yeah, man. So a fellow duelist over here, definitely appreciate that, man. I'd love to see that card game experience has carried you so far into like your card game career now, because like I mean you're living the dream, man. You're casting the DLCs, you're a Lorcana content creator. We're doing as much as we can, to keep that going. I think that's awesome. Like your card game experience obviously has helped you there, and I love to see it as a fellow duelist. So I think that's really cool, man. I do want to add a little bit to what you guys were talking about when it comes to like prepping for the tournaments real quick, because there was one more thing I wanted to say. Know your rulings too. I think that's really important, especially like coming from Yu-Gi-Oh, because you were just talking about how the community's toxic, right? In Yu-Gi-Oh, if you don't know your rulings, people take advantage of you, and it took so long for like the actual company to make it a rule to not do that anymore. Like you can't do that stuff. But like for a long time, like you were able to misrepresent information and get away with it, because if your opponent didn't know rulings and you did, you could just get away with cheating. And it'll happen in Lorcana. It'll happen in every game, in any sport even. You know what I mean? It happens. So you need to know your rules. You need to know interactions, and you can't rely either on stuff like Pixelborn or Inkdex or any of those online simulators to give you accurate rulings. So that's another thing, join these discords, get in contact with some Twitter judges. There's a lot of people who judge Lorcana that are active on the social media communities. Ask some questions, ask about interactions. Understand how the phases work, like ready, set, draw. Like understand that you check your lore for your locations, your flins before you draw for your draw phase. So like you'll finish the game before you need to draw for your turn if you're gonna win that way. You know what I mean? And I think it's those little things too that are very important to study up on, because they're coming from other card games. That was something that I had to learn in the worst ways. You lose a match, you tell your friends, this is how I lost a match, and then your friends look at you and they say they can't do that, and you're like, oh my gosh, and then and then you go to a judge, and judge is like, well, that's your fault because you weren't paying attention. So it's
like I've said it before, I'll say it again. It's always your fault. It's never anyone else's fault.
Yeah.
As harsh as that might be, and I'm not going to claim that I'm just this big tough love guy. I think sometimes there is every reason for tough love. I think there is a time and a place for it, but not amongst card game players. You have to learn this the hard way, unfortunately. And,
no, literally, dude.
It's a jungle out there. But yeah, like to your point, I remember one of the first times I found the confidence as a young Yu-Gi-Oh player to, like, someone was trying to cheat me. I actually remember I was playing this was, I had Jinzo and limiter removal, which you might remember.
Double the attack.
So they had less than 4,800 life points. I've gone in with Jinzo. And they've gone no response. I say damage step. They go, yeah, limiter. And they try and book a moon me. I was like, you can't anymore. It's a damage step. But again, it was little things like this that not everyone knew. And they would try and say, of course I can. It's quick play. Like,
yeah, and it's like, you can't do that, sir. Like, I'm already, man. And you have to know that. And like people, and like, not to say that your opponent, was trying to do anything fishy, because you never know. They could also just not understand the game themselves. Yeah. But the people do that. Like, people 100%
know your rights.
Yeah.
Know your rights.
Yeah. As a player, know how you're supposed to play the game. Zach, I do also appreciate you talking about your morning rituals. Every morning I get a coffee and a croissant. I'm a little worried that I can't do that in Texas, but I will look for a coffee place in Texas. But for set championships, for online tournaments, for anything,
coffee and cornbread, right?
Coffee, cornbread. There you go. Like, but yeah, for anything, like, I try and keep the same routine. You're talking about, if you're going to the gym, get your mind right. That's super important. Get your mental going. Put yourself in a position in which you're going to be comfortable. If you got a special pair of boxers that you want to wear that make you feel good, wear those special pair of boxers. Yeah. That's what I do. Okay, I save my nice boxers for like my tournaments. So I know that I'm going to be comfy, not sitting down on like I'm comfortable. Or my clothes too, like I wear. If I know it's gonna be hot in Texas, so I'm planning out my outfits already, so I'm not like sweating up a storm, and feeling all like icky, because I just want to be 1,000% focused on the game. So, do what feels right for you, and learn those mashups and learn the meta. And speaking about the meta, before, we finish off with this quest with the guest, I do want to go over a tier list breakdown real quick with you, Baker. Can you help us break down this meta with us? Give me 1 second.
Let's do it.
All right. We have the inks here, and then we have a tier list going with 5 possible sections in which you can plate them. Basically, we're not going to be judging this tier list off of what is the quote-unquote best deck, because we just finished saying you can play a variety of decks this meta. We're going to base this off of what you're more than likely going to see in the meta of these big tournaments. So if you're playing a set championships, you're playing a DLC, I want us to be able to piece what you're more than likely going to see. So we have most played, very played, somewhat played, maybe played, and then buns. And buns is just for color combinations that are just kind of bad and you're not going to see at your DLC more than likely, right? Okay, so let's start off with the most played section. Now, I'm going to pick the first one because it's obvious. We're going to see a Bucker noobs. We're going to see Lucky Buckies all day. You're going to see Bucky Emerald Steel, because I think it is probably one of the most represented decks. Do you guys think it's going to be the most represented deck? I think it'll probably be the most represented, if not maybe the second.
I'm more convinced than ever that it will be the most represented, with the addition of the fact it's Bucky's final swan song. It was already the top 2 for Germany, and I think a lot of people that enjoyed Bucky, or at least enjoyed the benefits and that they reap from Bucky, are just going to go, well, I'm not going to have many opportunities to play this. So yeah, I think it'll be one of the top 2 most represented in combinations for sure.
Yeah, the other thought I had, because that's a thought I what you just said I agree with wholeheartedly, but the other thought I had too was that there could be a chance, and I don't believe this is going to happen, but there could just be a chance that enough people with the consensus of Bucky's errata being during the DLC Toronto, you will be playing without Shimmering Skies, but with the Bucky errata. There could be some players looking to get some practice with other decks, and they might have been taking non-Bucky related strategies to their set champs just to have more practice. But I think without a doubt it's going to be the number 1 represented during day 1. I'd like to think it would be either first or second place, and we look at other decks that would be into the day 2. And so I would like to have hope that a different color combination would have more representation in top cut. Again, a lot of people have had time to think about their strategies and game plans against the Bucky decks, so we could see a little decline in the Bucky, but day 1 for sure probably be the most represented in the room.
Yeah. I think I'm more focusing on like day 1 as opposed to top cut, just because we have to get through day 1 to make it to top cut. So you got to be prepared on what you're probably going to run into. Where do you think a deck like Emerald Amber lands? Now, I kind of want to put this in somewhat, but I honestly want to put it in maybe, because the variance of like big tournaments, right? You might not even run into it one time throughout the whole round, but like a lot of people play this deck, right? Like, I'm not tripping.
No, you're not tripping. I'm getting ready to do videos covering the decks that won Ursula's as set championships. So I've had people either email me or tweet me their list that they've used to win an Ursula. So I was looking through them today, and yeah, there are quite a few people that are enjoying this lemon and lime, quite a lot of them utilizing Under the Sea. I think a lot of people are enjoying this because it's a quite fun little engine that you can run with the likes of the Muses, which is a super cute card to bounce characters back, and you can play Bare Necessities. You can still play Ursa Deceiver of All when you play her with Sudden Chills and Bare Necessities and Mother Knows Best. Painting the Roses red, and you can run the Prince Johns, as you were alluring to earlier. So yeah, I think there's a few people that are enjoying this Emerald Amber in combination. I think it's mostly people that have already won an Ursula and they're going into their second set championships and they want to play something a little spicy, which I totally respect.
Yeah,
For sure.
definitely a winnable deck. I think it's something to
Mm.
respect. I will put it in somewhat, just because, like, I think you mentioned that the under the sea capabilities are very good. I've been seeing this deck list pop up a lot on like YouTube as well, or just like a bunch of other like Ursula returns lists. So I'll put it in somewhat. Like, I think you will see it in the room. So you just gotta respect this deck. Make sure you keep up on like how this deck plays, right? Zach, what do you think of Amethyst Amber? Is it buns? Are we not gonna see it at all that day?
Um, Amethyst Amber might be buns, but something I kind of like to talk about with I just want to say one more thing about the Emerald Amber deck.
Hmm?
It feels like a really toxic relationship because when it's good, but when it's bad, it's really bad. So
Sounds about right.
it's my pet deck. Again, I love that Under the Sea card. It's my favorite song. But going back to what Kevin asked me, Amber Amethyst seems like it again. You can't say it's buns because aggro strategies have to be respected.
Mhm.
That's something that I kind of tell people all the time too. Is that like in Magic, there's RWD, which is red, RDW, which is red deck wins. So aggro decks, that's what the red color in that game means. It's more aggressive. Those strategies always have a chance to do well, and it usually takes like it's a meta call for me. So I always have to say maybe like Mufasa decks could be always available in the maybe because they're just meta calls, and those are just decks you have to understand and know what their game plans are about. Baker's telling us that he thinks that the Mufasa or at least the Amber Ruby color combination deserves somewhat. Again,
Yeah,
my whole take on it is you have to respect decks that people put in the time and practice with. We've seen Mufasa decks throughout the set 2, set 3, set 4 meta. We can't just deny and be delusional and say, well, no one's going to play this at this event. That's wrong. So understand
well,
what
it
these
won
decks
Atlanta,
do.
right? The purple version won Atlanta,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
Exactly.
I know we're in a new format now, but point remains. And yeah, I'm a big fan of Mufasa, and like even the Amber Ruby deck without Mufasa. Like again, we would mentioned earlier the location deck with Jim Hawkins and Just in Time. And like the underworld things like that, that's great. And I think there are other Amber Ruby decks that can do really, really well. Like I love Mufasa, but like even if you don't play Mufasa, there's such a great engine of cards in that color combination. So I absolutely think Amber Ruby is something that I would put in a somewhat column. And like when I was doing Germany, whenever I wasn't casting, I was walking on the top tables, seeing what was doing well,
Mhm.
and there was nearly always 2 or 3 Mufasa decks like between tables 1 and 20. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think you're wrong if you assume you're not going to see that. And just to add a comment onto the Amber Amethyst aggro, I think maybe's probably the right column for it. But if anything, I kind of think this is its time. I think if there was ever a time for aggro to get away with making a top cut, I would play it in Fort Worth because there's going to be so much Ruby Amethyst, and like you should have a good Ruby Amethyst matchup if you're Amber Amethyst aggro. The Bucky decks, I think I've not played the matchup, but I would assume aggro has a pretty good Bucky because you just empty your hand. You only need to ink to 3 or 4, right? And then you just empty your hand, and then you're just doing things faster than them. And if all they can put on the board is Buckies, they can't even contest your characters necessarily if you've got like Baloo and things with Bodyguard. So I think an aggro deck, if you can dodge the Sapphire Steel decks, I think aggro could do really, really well at Fort Worth. Whether or not enough people will pick it up, different question. But
Yeah.
if you're feeling daring, I feel like this is the time to give aggro a go.
Yeah, if you're an aggro player and you've mastered the art of how to get to 20 as fast as possible, then I think I agree with you, man. I agree because personally, I like aggro decks' format. You have a very good Ruby Amethyst matchup. You should be good against the Sapphire matchup, even against Sapphire Steel. I think you're favored because they have such a slow start sometimes. If they don't open up their babooms, their smashes, their cannons on curve, you're going to be gaining a bunch of lore while they're gaining ink, but they're still doing nothing, right? So yeah, I think aggro decks have their time for sure. I like that we mentioned that There's 2 different decks you can play in the Amber Ruby combination, by the way, Mufasa or the non-Mufasa. And I tend to see at least 1, 2, or at least 3 people playing these at the set championship tournaments. I always see at least 1 or 2 of these decks, right? You know, and same thing. I don't really see the Laker color combination too often, but I think it does have a lot of high potential. I think the Sapphire Amber Mufasa deck, or not even a Mufasa deck if I'm not mistaken. Well,
the
Sapphire
hero deck.
Yeah, there you go, the hero deck, Sapphire Amber, the hero deck. Yep. I think that deck is actually
this was doing well in Germany as well. I was really trying to feature one of these that was on like table 9 or 10. Didn't happen, but yeah, walking up and down the halls and see blue yellow, I was like, what is this?
Yeah, I like this deck. This deck it's like another aggro deck, just like you were saying. And I'll have the deck list on the screen right now of like one of the more recent like set champs Ursula winners for this deck list, and it really takes advantage of just playing characters on curve, being able to gain lore with cards like Hans or the new Anna, you know, doubling up your lore, stuff like that. And the Amber color has the blue cards. It has that new Donald Duck bodyguard that gives your characters +1 lore for a turn. Like, there's a lot of possibilities as a meta. Will you actually run into it? Maybe. Like, you know, so you should know these deck lists. You know, like it would be really lame if you just lost to one of these color combinations because you didn't know what they were gonna play on curve because you're not prepared yet. You know what I mean? So don't count these decks out. They definitely have some high potential. You know, and personally, I really want to try the hero deck at my set champs after I get back from Texas. Right? Where does Amber Steel land in this situation? Because I feel like this deck was like super good, and then now it's not too good. But then people play like a Mufasa version now, you know? Like, would you put it in very played or somewhat? Because I feel like people who play this deck, they're diehard fans of this deck, you know?
It's very hard for me to pinpoint because I like you just said, there's a Steel Fossas variant. So part of me feels that Steel Song would be in the maybe, but Steel Fossa could be in the somewhat. It's like he just mentioned, it's the right time for Mufasa to show up. Kevin and I both know how strong Mufasa is against Ruby Amethyst. This is a Ruby Amethyst dominated meta. Also, the Bucky decks are just what you expect too. And Steel Song, although it can deal with the early characters with a bunch of removal, Steel Fossa just has a bunch of early characters that help, you know, threaten and challenge the board. There is that 2/3 broom that's evasive during your turn to help contest the Diablo. You have characters like Piglet and Smee giving you extra lore so you can win the race against those decks. I really think that like it's a really hard to just make one color combination. I would put Steel Song in the maybe, but Steel Fossa in the somewhat. If I had to split up that color combination somehow, just because I haven't played any games with the Steel Fossa. I've only theorized and done mulligans with it. But it does seem like it's a deck that it's very, very hard to pilot. However, when you do know how to pilot, it's very hard to lose with it because you understand your deck very well into a meta of everyone else's decks, but they don't understand your deck that well at all.
Yeah, it's interesting because like I also respect the Steel Fossa deck. I'm quite a fan of that 60. But I would actually go the opposite way and I would put Steel Song on the very played because there was a heck of a lot of it in Germany that I saw. We have seen it consistently do well in nearly every single DLC. At least a few have made day 2. It tends to be quite highly represented. And like you say, it's like there's a really high skill ceiling, but like high reward for that skill ceiling with Steel Fossa. Like, again, I've had the opportunity to practice against Zach Bivens playing Steel Song a lot. Before we lost Pixelborn, like for first set championship, I was like, you're the man when it comes to this deck, or at least one of the best. I want to be playing you. I want to be seeing how well I do against you to learn this matchup. And when you see the best pilots use this deck, it's so hard to bet against it because it just overwhelms and just the advantage that it can generate through multiple whole new worlds and Rapunzels. And again, the Bivens special, if you go with the Flute and the Pride lands, it's just so much for so many decks to answer. So yeah, I feel the same way on the Steel Fossa list. I would put that in somewhat, but I actually think Steel Song is going to be more played than people might think because I think the Steel Song Ruby Amethyst matchup is like Rock Austin. I think that's like the ultimate rivalry of Lorcana.
Rock Austin.
I think it's the Rock Austin of Lorcana. I really do. I think these are the two like big players at the end of the day that it keeps coming down to. And at different points of time, one may be getting a bit of a better push than the other and performing a bit better, but it doesn't mean that the other one isn't capable of beating it. And that being the case, on top of the fact that it definitely has a good Bucky, I think you could see a good amount of Steel Soul.
Oh yeah, I agree. I'll have to put it in very played. Especially, well, I mean, that's just because there's two different variants you can play. You can play the move the Steel Fossil or the Steel Song, but I would put it in very played too. I think a lot of people still play this deck, so you'll probably run into it at least one time. And like you said, man, some people like Zach Bivens know how to pilot it to the T and be undefeated in Swiss, so it can happen. You know, I would also agree. I think very played. I kind of want to put Emerald Amethyst in very played, but I know people don't play it that much, but. This deck, in my opinion, is like tier 0, tier 1. This deck could be the best deck. It's just so hard to play. It feels like also like one of those decks where it has a certain type of skill ceiling where if you don't do it right, you always lose at like 18, 17, 19 lore, you know. But if you do it right, you blow out your opponent. But I'll put it in somewhat. I think that this deck is highly represented, but not by a lot of players, you know. So this deck tends to, but like. You always see one. You always see one like go undefeated in Swiss or end up in like top 4. You know, so it's a very good deck. Do you guys agree? Would you guys agree with somewhat?
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
I could see that. They're just, you know, I think in our local area, there's not a lot of Emerald Amethyst enthusiasts, I would like to say.
Yeah.
But I'm throwing any sort of thoughts I have about that out the window when I'm looking at the Fort Worth Challenge this upcoming weekend.
Yeah.
So I'm going to anticipate like majority of these color combinations that we have up on our tier list here today. I'm going to, like Kevin even said too, just know what the card pool is and know what their deck, the cards that they have in their deck that they could potentially be playing. So even I'm gonna try to look at some Amber Sapphire deck lists after this and just try to just look at it. I'm not gonna put a lot of thought into it because I don't have to.
But you want to know.
It's something to consider. Something to consider.
Oh yeah, you should just know. You should just know because it's a good deck. You should just know it's a good deck. You know what else is a very good deck? Ruby Amethyst, which all three of us are very big fans of.
No, it's not. It's the best deck.
I think Ruby Amethyst might be the best deck. It does so much. I think it's going to be the most played deck in the room. I think you're going to see so many people playing this at DLC to Fort Worth at your set championships. I don't know. It just feels like as of recently, a lot of players have been picking this deck up too. It's very rewarding. I think it makes you feel like you're very good at the game sometimes when you can just draw rabbit. Yeah. But in general though, like there is a way to beat Bucky with this deck, and now that people are starting to realize that you could just slow roll the game and you can win against that deck, people are starting to go back to it. So I think it's going to be the most played deck in all of the weekend. Do you guys agree?
Yeah, it's going to be that or Bucky. Like, and there won't be much in it for sure.
Yeah. 110%. So the metas that I've seen throughout set champ, like there was somebody set champ top 8 that they posted. First place Bucky, second place Bucky, third place Ruby M, fourth place Ruby M, fifth place Ruby. Like it was just green, steel, red, purple, and one amber steel that got 8th place. But again, like these are the top 2 decks.
Yeah.
You need to know how to play against in and out, whether you're playing those decks themselves, you're playing another off meta or a homebrew deck. You need to know what Ruby Amethyst and Emerald Steel's game plans are. You need to be aware and prepared. If you're not, you will find yourself having a difficult, challenging time at the challenge.
Before you put blurple in buns, I just need to put a little idea into your head. One little idea, all right. Turn 3, Mickey. Turn 4, Isabella.
Oh, that's a very strong.
That doesn't sound a little bit dirty, right?
No, yeah, that sounds gas. That sounds very strong. Quest for 4 on turn 4, and then just keep going. That's a 5-turn clock. Isabella is a 5-turn clock.
You just sing your friends with the Mickey because then you're not questing with it, right? So yeah, you got a little free 3-cost singer there.
I like Blurple. I'm so excited to try some Blurple next format. Like just bouncing your Elsas always seems proper dirty.
No. With the new Merlin, I think Blurple is going to get a huge boost. I don't think that Blurple is a bad deck by any means. If anything, I have a cool Blurple deck that I also want to take for set champs. But I don't think you're going to run into this color combo at your set champs. at the DLC.
I didn't see many for what it's worth when I was
Yeah.
at Germany.
Yeah, so like I mean it's buns for
Unfortunately.
it's buns for the sake of the fact that I think people aren't gonna risk it. People aren't. I think if you're gonna play like a set champs, you're gonna play 6 rounds of Swiss. Most people are not gonna risk this type of deck, and I don't think there's that many deck lists that you can even really keep up with to try and like know what this deck is gonna do against you. Maybe some from last format, so obviously try and keep up with like the strategies, like you were just saying. Turn 3 Mickey, turn 5 Isabella's kind of nice, So when you see when you do pair up against this color combination, I think you should still think about those kind of things. But I'm not gonna lose much sleep over preparing for this matchup going into the tournaments this weekend, personally. But I think it's a good deck. And I will prove it. I will try and win an Ursula with Blurple when we get back from Texas. Amethyst Steel. A lot of people are playing Amethyst Steel now, bro. Like, Speci has just created a wave of Amethyst Steel players, from Broom Goons to Tempo players to aggro players. I want to put it in very played, honestly. What do you guys think?
I would agree. So yeah, like I said, I had my set championship a couple of weeks ago, and Spetsy was my only loss of the day. In round 4, he straight 2-0'd me. No excuses. He was running the Maleficent biding her time as well, and I was only on 4 Chernobyls. Like RA tends to play a lot less 1-drops than it used to. But yeah, super low to the ground with things like Smees, the Bell. He didn't actually use the Bell against me, but I really like the Bell. I think it's a good addition. And yeah, it just destroyed me. And then we both made top 4. I beat Earlmeister, he beat Alphos, and then it was meant to be the rematch in the final, but the event had overrun and I had to go home. So I just gave him the win. But like I said, he'd beat him. He 2-0'd me in Swiss, and I don't know if the rematch would have gone any better, really, because I do think Amethyst still has a really good Ruby Amethyst matchup, especially if you're a good pilot. So yeah, I do think it is kind of the meta breaker of the weekend, or will be. So yeah, I agree completely with very played.
I'd even go as far as putting it up in the top 3. Again, I said this to Kevin. Amethyst Steel is really Amethyst without Be Prepared, but you can't disrespect the Steel card pool, like Smees, the removal it has with Smash, Ultra Storm Raychon, and then along came Zeus. Because it still has access to those very powerful Amethyst cards like Merlin Rabbit, Merlin Goat, and the Queen's Castle. So just kind of understand this deck, understand your matchup against it. You will be seeing it in if you go to the DLC in Fort Worth. You may not play against it due to just the matchmaking RNG, but the deck is going to be alive and well. Again, it's what beat me in the finals of my set champs, and it felt like I had an uphill battle most of the time. Even the game that I won, I had a little bit of an uphill battle before I finally stabilized. But it's just so powerful, and it goes to really show you like the amount of like strength that's in the Amethyst card pool. Like those cards generating infinite value. It's why Blurple has to be kind of somewhat respected, because they have Amethyst as one of their color combinations. So yeah, I move it up. If I was making this tier list, it would be in the most played category.
Yeah, I mean, Zach, you did play against 2 Amethyst Steel in top 8 of our set championship. You played against one in top 8 and another one in the finals, actually. I also played Calvin, who beat you in the finals. He 2-0'd me in Swiss with Amethyst Steel. Amethyst Steel has a very good matchup against Ruby Am and a very good matchup against Emerald Steel. I think the only reason I won't put it here, I'm not saying that it's not powerful enough. It definitely is. I'm just more so, are you going to see it more, because you're more than like, there's no way you don't get through a whole set champs not playing against Ruby Am or Emerald Steel at least one time, right? And then I think next you will see Amethyst Steel, and just as much as you were likely to see Amber Steel Flute Song, in there. So it's not necessarily about power. I guess where I want to focus more on like how likely you will see it. But I do respect Blurple. I'm telling you, Blurple's good. It's just no one's really on it right now. So I don't think you should expect to play against it too much. Same thing with this color combination, Emerald Ruby, which is very good. I want to put this in maybe because there is that list floating around with that one player. I don't remember her name, but she acquired an Ursula. I believe the Forbidden Mountain shared her story like in the Facebook groups, and she was playing a very budget-friendly deck. It was just a bunch of evasive characters with Ruby, Emerald, some Cheshire Cats, and not even any Diablos. And they won an Ursula with it. So look into that list. I think it'll do you guys some good. So like what to save your brawls for if you're playing that color, or so your removal for. Have you guys seen this deck going and floating around?
Yeah, briefly. It was a lot of fun. Again, I like seeing around set championship season people trying out whether it's more spicy stuff or sometimes it's just like budget decks. Because again, we got to remember not everybody has access to all the cards, especially if you're a newer player. So it's always good to get to see other decks do well. I don't know. I don't know how much I think you'd see it. There's probably a couple in the room. I'd be probably more inclined to put it into buns. But I think you're still absolutely right. Like, it's worth taking a look at all the decks that are out there, because if you don't prepare for it, then sod's law, round one, you'll be up against that Emerald Ruby deck and you won't know what it does.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I believe Zan Syed made a video as well of his Emerald Ruby deck. There's a couple
Okay.
there's a couple variations of this. Like, I don't like, again, I don't know if like you'll actually see it, but I'd put it as a maybe because I've seen it enough on social media. Like, I've been seeing it, and then you know, and it's a budget friendly deck, man. If you can spend $20 to win a $200 Ursula, why not? You know.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. Heck yeah.
So what about the concept? Oh, hear me out, Baker. Hear me out. How do you feel about turn 3 Mickey into turn 5 Peter, or I mean Big Pete? I mean
turn 3 Mickey into turn 4 Big P.
Yep,
I mean, that sounds kind of fun.
Probably not the most impactful play though. Yeah, it's probably buns. It's probably not the most impactful play. I really wanted to make Emerald Sapphire work. I had this list that I was really trying. I just want to play every set championship and just play all these fun decks. But I had this list I was trying with Bucky. I would go like turn 1, whatever, like turn 2 Bucky, turn 3 Mickey, and then you play the Olaf that costs 3. You know, the new Floodborn Olaf. That Olaf's that Olaf's kind of nice because then you can use like that Olaf to give your I think it was Pain, and who gains more lore if he has more strength. You use him to pump up that, or you can pump up your Big Pete, which is kind of nice, you know. But I don't think that.
Yeah, I love it, but I just feel like you would do so much better if you just went with Amber and you played the Queen.
Yeah, exactly.
Then you can play Mufasa as well.
Yep, yeah, exactly. You
cheat out Big Pete. Cheat out Big Pete. Cheat out John Silver from Chapter 1. Pick your fights.
Give everybody Reckless.
give a character Reckless on their turn when they haven't even quested with it yet.
Exactly.
See,
that I'm kind of stealing that. It was when I was in Germany, obviously I got to meet Tim, who's on the design team, and he has like just a case of like 10 decks. Whenever someone wants to play, he basically just does a random for which deck he's going to play with. And one of the decks he had was Emerald Amber Mufasa villains, with like Mufasa, Pete, John Silver, as I just said, and it was playing like the Queen that gives your villains extra lore, and yeah, it was super interesting.
Okay, all right, yeah. See, and then that's what we like to always talk about in this game, and that it's just a game that's going to continue to growing, developing. You can try so many different ideas. There will be, you know, some checks and balances, right? Because again, they're the design team, the people that creating these cards, they have an idea of what people are going to play with them. They're going to assume what cards are better and what cards aren't. And a color combination that just keeps getting better and better with every set is Ruby Sapphire. This is a deck that between me and a few other testing partners, we go back and forth on this deck a lot because there is the consensus that this deck can be teched out to beat the meta. You have a lot of item tools at your disposal, and you have alternate win conditions outside of questing. Obviously, you're gaining the lore, but you have alternate win conditions with Lucky Dime, and that is a very, very people talk about that card a lot right now in this format because it's a card that Ruby Amethyst cannot answer. Some Emerald Seal decks have the item removal, but against that deck, you're not looking to play that card. You're looking to just ramp up super early and get your removal, and that's what you do in that matchup. And it has all the utility to answer locations with the rush characters, and in addition, Vitalisphere is a card that's been seen float around in a lot of lists, which gives a character rush and +2 strength at the cost of banishing it and paying 1 ink. So when you play Tamatoa, you can add it back, play it, banish it, assuming you have all the ink to do that with, and kill a castle immediately. So this deck seems to always be evolving, but it seems to have a kind of like a similar strategy where you're ramping, you're playing more of a control game, and then you have an alternate win condition.
Yeah, the deck is insane. It was the most heavily represented deck at the DLC in Chicago. It was obviously huge at the DLC in Bochum. I do think that it does have a tough time in Top Cut sometimes, depending on the matchups. But you're for sure probably going to see this as well. I think I wouldn't say guaranteed, but like the odds of you playing this are very high. At least playing into one. I kind of want to put it in very played though, because some people do kind of like push away from this deck sometimes because of how I guess tough some of the aggro matchups are. Because if you play into an aggro deck with like Sapphire Ruby, it just feels really bad. But I think because of what you were saying, Zach, a lot of players like have been adapting this deck and like using it kind of like adding to its utility, kind of changing up the list to give it more of like a jack of all trades kind of feel. Like it definitely will be represented. And I would not sleep on it. I would look at every list as I possibly can so you know what they're playing, because people are playing stuff like Hercules now, like the Vitalisphere. So you got to know.
That's what I was gonna say. I actually think that more than anything is the missing piece. I think you're absolutely right. Vitalisphere is a great addition, which helps in a lot of situations. But it's the Hercules for me. There was only one that made top 16 of Bochum one Ruby Sapphire list, and it was running 3 Maui, 2 Hercules, and I think that is absolutely. I said it in my review that is absolutely the count I would play. I think just being able to one shot the castle just does wonders for it. So yeah, I think if more Ruby Sapphire players start that split of 3-2 Hercules Maui, or Maui Hercules, then I think that really helps it. And I think you definitely need to be playing 2 or 3 of the Emboldened Warrior Sisu so that you have a response to Flynn Sisu Castle from the red purple players, to try and keep yourself out of that. But yeah, I think teched out Ruby Sapphire could still potentially be best deck in format.
Oh yeah, it's not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. So we can just agree that Ruby Steel is just not a real deck, right?
Have you not seen my hero deck, buddy?
No, I haven't. I have not. No.
Yeah, your homework is to go watch the hero deck. Philatites, my guy.
Oh, I saw you upload it. I saw you upload it.
I will say I have dared everyone to go and play this deck. So if you do start seeing more of it, it might be my fault.
Yeah, you uploaded it yesterday, right? Like I saw it come up on my timeline. I thought it was an Amber Steel, but it's a Ruby Steel.
No. It's red Steel Heroes. It's what the dev team were playing against me over the weekend. It has a good Ruby Amethyst, but it kind of hard loses to 2-drop Ursula because it's similar to Steel Song, where you just play as much of your hand as you can out and then wheel. Do it all again and just overwhelm. But it kind of lives and dies by the whole new world. If they snipe it, it's kind of just game over. But it's got a good Ruby Amethyst matchup. It's good fun. You probably won't see much of
it. you know what though? Since you made a video on it, I will put it in maybe, because there will. I will guarantee you there's some villain out there who's going to take it to their set championship because they know that all of their people are playing Ruby Am and they're just going to spank people and they're going to be like, Lorcana villain showed me how.
With the spice.
Yeah, with the spice. All right, we'll put it in maybe. And guys, go watch that video if you guys want to see the spice. I need to do my homework and catch up on it now because, again, I don't want to get caught with my pants down. I'm playing Ruby Am. I'm literally playing Ruby Am. What if I queue into your deck, Baker? What if I queue in and then I'm just thinking like, I can't believe Lorcana villain made this video. I'm gonna lose because I didn't watch his video. there you go. So, there you go.
You got to learn your matchups, my guy.
Yeah, and you got to subscribe to Lorcana villain to learn those matchups, everybody. Okay, last deck, Sapphire Steel. I personally think this is one of the best decks of the format. It's just so hard to pilot. It's out of my skill ceiling, too big brain for me. I like more safe things like rabbits and goats, but I will put it in very played section. I think a lot of people want to play this deck because it has a very good bulky matchup, right?
It definitely has a good bulky matchup, but another thing that I like to always say about like Sapphire, it's a color that allows you to be very flexible with the other combination you're choosing with. Like we just talked about the Sapphire Ruby deck being teched out. This deck is also seeing a lot of different changes in techs. Argus is this 2-drop 4/1 that looks very, very interesting on paper. It doesn't seem to really. It has a lore value of 1, so it's not getting you extra lore. It seems to just be like this body that can die to anything, even if the new two. Oh, sorry, not the new, but the old 2-drop Robin Hood makes an appearance again, and that just snipes it out for 1. But it's very, very powerful into the Ruby Amethyst matchup. Being able to check the Flynn Rider and being able to out the castle with it's me in itself just been proving a lot of results. I know RMB has made a video about it, and he even kind of said that, like, I thought this card would be really bad, and he changed his mind. So it's something to think about. Sapphire allows other colors to have a lot more utility because of the ramping capabilities. Some reasons being able to play cards a turn before you should be able to is really good for some reason, So being able to play like your Tinkerbells on turn 4 or 5, being able to cheat out a Cogsworth on turn 4, it's very good. It's very strong. Not a lot of decks have tools to remove early threats, so you're able to really like control the early to mid game, and late game it just has Dime Tamatoa.
All cards are bad until the meta calls for them.
That right, yeah. Like it's just, especially you read something like Argus and you're like 4/1, what do I need this for? And then like later on you're like,
Yeah.
actually I need this.
This is now exactly what I need.
Yep. All right, guys. Thank you so much, Baker, for letting us get this tier list going on what you're probably gonna see at your set championship / DLCs. We have it right here. Feel free to let us know in the comments if you agree, disagree, and I will be posting any of the deck lists that you saw on the screen in the description below if you guys want to see them. But yeah, man, before we wrap up this episode of Quest with a Guest, my goons, Baker, are there any shout outs you want to give?
First of all, to you guys, thank you. Thanks so much for having me on. Again, been a big fan for a long, long time. And yeah, like for what it's worth, here's my public endorsement. I really hope the Lorcana Goons channel gets a card reveal of its own someday. I'd love to see you guys get some of those sort of opportunities. I'm obviously very grateful and self-aware for the things that that have happened for me. I'd like to think I'd earned them, but I'm still very grateful for them. And like, I'd like to see more people that deserve it get those sort of opportunities. So, then again, I hope it all happens for you. But at the very least, Disney Lorcana, if you're watching, consider these guys for a card review in the future. I know they're looking out for the Goons card specifically, but I'm sure the boys would appreciate anything and their chance to share it with the community. So yeah, to you guys, a huge shout out and thank you for all the work that you do for the community. I know firsthand how much goes into it, especially when you're balancing it with a job and a family and trying to play the game as well to a competitive level. You did very well at Atlanta yourself, so that's fantastic. So yeah, huge shout out to you guys. A huge shout out to all the other content creators, all the community, everyone that's been a fan of mine, whether it's been since the very beginning or just recently. I appreciate everyone. I appreciate everyone that I've got to meet in Lille and in Bochum. It's mind-blowing that like people know who you are and they care enough to want to have a chat with you, want something signed, want a picture. That's all very flattering, and like I hope I do it justice. And yeah, just all the love to Lorcana, to the dev team as well, and all the staff. Again, I've got the chance to meet a lot of the Ravensburger staff and dev team and stuff like that over the last couple of events, and they're so cool and they love this game so much, and they're not stupid. They're just like us. They're experienced TCG veterans that are working within a rule set. Please, everyone, remember that. There are certain things that need to be approved by Disney or this company or this company or this company, but at the heart and soul of it is just a group of really experienced, really talented TCG fans that just want to give us the best game they possibly can. So show them some love, be patient with them.
Very well said. Yeah, that is very important. Anything that kind of goes on, there's so many people, behind the scenes working to making sure things go right. And, big kudos to anybody in the R&D and the dev department, because we play this game, but we also love to talk about it too. And without them, it's going to be a very bigger challenge. Kevin, any final thoughts?
Thanks again so much, Baker. Congrats for everything that you do for the community.
Thank you.
Yeah, looking forward to the future of your Lorcana journey. Yeah, remember to like, comment, and subscribe to Lorcana Goons and to Lorcana Villain. We do appreciate it. Zach, any final words?
Yes, guys. Well, stay tuned to Lorcana Goons. This was Quest with a Guest, the podcast you can lore for more. And make sure to join our Discord because we got an awesome community of people that are sharing all these ideas, talking about their set champs experiences, and just all overall very supportive of everyone. And I'm proud of all you guys that are just getting involved, talking about, what's going on, what your thoughts are. Just remember, guys, it's a family-friendly game. This is a Disney trading card game. We're all here to, be a part of something. Before we send you off, Baker, what is your favorite Disney movie?
Basil the Great Mouse Detective.
He's the rat again. He's the rat again. He's the rat again. Representative.
That is absolutely right. But a shout out to Treasure Planet. That's a favorite as well. It's a very sentimental one to me.
Those are both my girlfriend's favorites.
Nice, good taste. Yeah. No, Basil's nothing will ever replace that in my heart. And of course, the nefarious Professor Rattigan is my boy. So yeah, that's me.
Nice. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Remember, guys, stay tuned to Lorcana Goons for more, and we will see you Goons next time. Good luck to everybody playing card game tournaments this weekend.